experienced the deep stillness that is home to a loving awareness of unconditional love. And this is an area that he's doing a lot of work with and trying to discover for himself what unconditional love is. He calls it the place that is right here and everywhere, and these experiences have influenced his life, and they continue to.
It's a musical meditation. I asked Dave to pick up his instrument of choice, to let go of all his training, and to listen to the music that rises from his heart. I thought I heard a whale singing in that music somewhere. My name is Mark, and there is a place that is right here and everywhere. And this place has many names, and today I'm going to call this place the Benevolent Universe. And to me, benevolent means I love you, and I'm so happy to be one with you. I'm going to change my mic here, bring it a little bit further down. So I want to start by talking about Myrtle Fillmore. When Myrtle was a child, she was repelled by the teaching about sin and of the nature of evil. And she said that there was something in me that protested against the declaration that I was by nature evil and sinful. And so that protest kind of began her journey in life, and that journey is a hero's journey. And so she, as a young adult, she became a school teacher, and she said, you know, I love helping children hitch their wagons to the stars. Now this was close to 100 years ago, and apparently they still had wagons then. And so Myrtle was a very sickly person in her early life. And in fact, she had TB, she had tuberculosis, and was given only a few years to live. And then something happened. As a young adult, as a middle-aged, well, probably in her 20s, mid-20s, she was introduced to the teachings of the Christian Science Church, and she recognized the truth about her relationship to the divine. And that truth changed her mind. And she said, the claims the world made about health faded away before the dawning of a new consciousness, and her body temple was literally transformed through a renewing of her mind. And she became healed of all ailments. And she would say, I inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. And she denied everything else. And that conviction, her ability to cast away all doubt, is what healed her. And so she trained her mind to become the garden that expressed the benevolent universe. And then she started her second career as a minister, from which Unity was eventually born. And I believe Myrtle was on a hero's journey of helping humanity hitch our minds to the benevolent universe. She said that I need not be bound by limitations, and the truth of my divine relationship healed me. And then following her own healing, she began to heal many others. She called them treatments. These healing sessions were called treatments. And once she gave a man who was in a wheelchair a treatment, and he walked out of her office. And so those treatments affirmed the truth. I inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. And that benevolent universe does not know sickness. It only knows perfect health, because that's what love is. Perfect love is perfect health. Love is perfect peace. And so she planted these truths in her mind, and she grew a garden that grew within her mind. And in her own healing, she talked to her body parts. She told her heart that the pure love of the benevolent universe flowed in and out of her, and that all the world felt the universal joyous pulse of love. She told her eyes to express the sight of the benevolent universe or spirit. She tilled the soil of her mind and planted seeds that said, I inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. So now I'm going to change the story. A couple of weeks ago, I was pulling weeds out of the walkway entering this church. And I became quiet and reflective, and in that reflection I had some insights. I thought, can I pull weeds out of my mind? You know, the negative thinking could be a weed. And so I'm willing to try anything at least once. And so I wondered if I can pull a weed out of my mind. And so I put my hands to my head and started looking for weeds, and I found one. Oh my gosh, I just pulled a weed out of my mind. I wonder if I can pull another. And so I'm looking around, oh, there's another weed. 2 weeds. Look at all these weeds that I am pulling. So I pulled one weed after another, and these weeds look like this. Well, that person is a hypocrite. I pulled out the weed. Life is unfair. I pulled out the weed. That person is wrong. I pulled out the weed. And what do you think happened? There's a paradox here. As I'm focusing on what's wrong and what's hypocrites, and what do you think happened? Oh, wait a minute, Dan. I see a weed. I'm going to pull it out. There you go. Well, that was a big one. Woo. So what do you think happened? Let's take a few seconds. I'm going to tell you the answer. So what do you think happens as I'm focusing on weeds and trying to pull them out? Right. I got a lot more weeds. I manifested weeds. And here they are. Look at all the weeds that I manifested. I'm going to put this right here. And then something else happened in my life. I was invited to see a movie about the hero's journey based on Joseph Campbell, who is known for the interview with Moyers on the power of myths. And he talks about the hero's journey. And I think the hero's journey is about rediscovering your own garden. And I think Myrtle discovered her garden and started to plant new thoughts. And then the hero's journey, I think it's everyone's journey. And that at some point in the hero's journey, every hero encounters a dragon and then tries to slay that dragon. And we find ourselves in situations fighting against the bad, fighting against the unfairness, the hurtful, the cruelty. We are fighting the world. A lot of, in my case, I'm fighting my past. I'm remembering things that happened, and I'm projecting that outward, and I'm fighting the world through my past. And so we justify those dragons that need a good slaying. Those people need a good lesson. And so when I say that, we are living in the weeds. But in the hero's journey, the hero is fighting the dragon, and then he or she steps back and stops fighting. He or she surrenders. The hero drops his or her sword to the ground. The hero's protective armor drops, and the shield, the heavy shield, drops to the ground. And the hero stands perfectly vulnerable to the dragon. And this is where the inward journey begins. because that dragon was in you. So surrendering to the dragon means going inward and meeting the inner parts that you hated or feared or rejected. Those parts that we hid from, those parts that we hid then became bigger than you, and we put them outside of ourselves to be slain. But the hero surrenders to the dragon, stops fighting the dragon, and then the dragon takes off its mask. And the dragon was you and me. Now in the 12-step programs, the dragon is called the protector. The dragon is a protector, and it's called the addict. In 12-step programs, it's usually, we talk about the addict of some sort, some kind of addiction. And the addict is protecting you from hurt from our past, from feeling the feelings, from fear, from whatever you need protection from. But here's the question, does love need protection? And then, in the presence of a loving sponsor, you surrender. And you meet yourself with love in the presence of a loving sponsor. Because sometimes that's a difficult journey to do alone. So we need the help from another person, especially if we're not used to that. And then what happens is that there is a gift. In Myrtle's case, her gift was a gift of truth. I inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. So when you surrender to the dragon and that you've been fighting, you step aside, and the dragon gives you what you've been looking for. The dragon gives you a gift as well. And so when there is a loving connection of trust between you and the dragon, the parts that you once disowned and that you projected outward as bad, parts to be slain, then that dragon will remove its mask. And then you meet yourself and become more integrated with you. You become more integrated with the benevolent universe. And then you stop fighting yourself, you stop fighting the world, you stop pulling weeds. And then the things you ask for begin to show up. And one of the things I asked for amongst the weeds was a flower. And so a flower within the weeds began to show up because I surrendered. I'm going to put the flower in some water. And that flower is a gift from the dragon. And it's the same flower that inspired Dave's music. It's the same flower that inspired Myrtle. I inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. Now I'm going to share a personal story of my own dragon. About 5 days ago, I was outside and a bug crossed my path, and for no reason I killed the bug. I just wanted to kill the bug for apparently no reason. I didn't like the bug, so I killed it, which was rather unlike me. And in that moment, that bug was a dragon that I was fighting. And so I surrendered to my curiosity. And I looked inward and met a part of myself that felt that I was not powerful enough in this world to achieve my dreams. And for some strange reason, that belief became a bug. And I killed that bug for a sense of power. And when I met that part of me, I accompanied that part and brought compassion and love to that part, to that belief that I did not have enough power to influence my own destiny. That was my dragon. And that dragon I fought, I exercised power over another life, a bug in this case, because I believed I was not powerful to influence my life. And on that day, I was no longer a bully to bugs. And in the process of surrendering and loving that part of me, I found a new power. And this is important. I found a new power. And the next day, another bug, this is a true story, crossed my path while I was outside. And I said, thank you to that bug. And let that bug live its cycle, its life cycle. So the gift for me is a new truth that there is nothing outside of myself taking away my power. It was all something in me that I projected outward. I inherited from my I inherited from my benevolent universe only that which is good. And in that hero's journey, I found the good. And that good became expressed outward, and now bugs are a lot more happier. I stopped fighting the dragon, surrendered, and my anger went away. I was no longer angry that I wasn't powerful enough. And it became a little more peaceful. So that was the end of that story. And my fear was that it was true. I always had a fear. That it's true. I'm not powerful enough to influence my own life. And when I surrendered to that dragon, to that belief, when I stopped fighting it, I found that new truth. And that's part of the hero's journey, and that's something we all have to go through. Myrtle Fillmore met her dragon that said, I can't be healed. I have to be sick forever. And she found a new voice which said, I inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. And in finding her voice, she became healed and became a teacher of her truth, which is why we're here today. She hitched our wagon to the innate power of the benevolent universe. And every time you think you've had a failure, every time you look at your past and see, oh, I was unkind, or look at every resentment, every fear, there's like a little minus sign taking away from life. But here's the thing, that minus sign is waiting for you to make a vertical awareness, a vertical strike of awareness, so that you can become the plus sign with the benevolent universe. And without that minus sign, how could you become a plus sign? That minus sign was important. This experience of with that bug was important for me so that I can grow more into who I am. So when we become the plus sign, the tide rises for every ship, for every person, because you and I dared to take the hero's journey. And then now the benevolent universe is experiencing itself through you. And so when you love the dragon, the parts of yourself that became separate from love, those parts step aside. And then they become a new kind of strength, the strength of love. Because you love those parts, and they joined that love and became part of you. So whenever or whatever your battle is, when you surrender to the dragon, one of the gifts that dragon will give you is growing beyond your fears. And as I say that, I hear Myrtle in my mind, Myrtle Fillmore in my mind saying, you inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. And to stay focused on that. Not focusing on the weeds, but focusing on the flowers. And when you love the dragon, guess what? Sometimes the other dragons will appear too, because they are tired of being a dragon. They are tired of fighting the world and fighting with you. They want to stop the fight, or stop the hiding, or stop the running away, whatever form your dragon takes. And within the benevolent universe, when the fighting and hiding stops, you become that garden. And as you love those flowers, sometimes another weed will show up and say, love me. And you don't pull the weed, you don't fight it, you just love the weed. And then that weed will transform into a beautiful flower. Abraham Hicks says, she teaches her own version of surrender. Abraham teaches that to surrender to the dragon means to follow what feels good. And what surrender to the dragon is following what feels good. And what feels good then will come to you. And she says, this is law. And I'll tell you, Myrtle, in her statement of a benevolent God that will only bring good to you was her truth. That became true for her. So the hero's journey is about you coming to the point of you loving and accepting yourself just as you are. And in that powerful moment, you are lined up with love, and you are aligned to the benevolent universe, and there are no more wars. There are no more weeds to pull, just walking in the garden of your own beauty. And so that kind of brings in denials. Joseph Campbell says, the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. But who are you really? And that when something comes up like a weed, you deny that. I am not this weed. And we use denials to disidentify from the weeds and follow that with a statement of truth about yourself. And those truths become the flowers, the garden that you are planting in your mind, in which the universe then responds to and gives you that garden. There's a man named Mooji that I sometimes follow, and he talks about controlling. And, you know, sometimes people like to control everything. I've been in situations where I like to control everything outside myself, including when Dan picks up the phone. I want to control that. And so this is a perfect dragon opportunity. I'm fighting the dragon from control. And so when I go inward and surrender, when I surrender to that dragon and go inward, you know, what's there? Well, I want to look good. I want the church to look good. I want to be heard. I want to be honored. And for some reason I thought by picking up a phone, that's not the case. And I'm sorry. But I know you care about me, and I know you honor me. And so now I'm free from that. And so isn't Dan. Mooji tells a beautiful story of a woman who came to him and said, you know, I have so many responsibilities, so many things to do, so many people depend on me, and it feels like I'm going to fall apart. And then the man that came with her said, oh, you can't fall apart. And he pulled out his calendar and said, and looked at his schedule and said, there's no time for you to fall apart. However, in about 3 months, there's a 3-day opening for you to fall apart. This is a true story. So we're so much into controlling everything, managing everything, that we lose the freshness of life. And this is the freshness of life. The gift of being with the freshness of life is a garden. I inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. And when I focus only on that which is good, I actually do feel better. The fighting stops. There are no more dragons out there, no more boogeymen. There's just me being with my own garden. And by the way, sometimes if that lady did break down, that breaking down is God's way of doing reconstructive surgery. Pulling out the weeds for you, tilling the garden for you, adding fertilizer for you, which is mostly the composted weeds, so that you can plant new truths. That was a tough lesson for me to learn. I hated God for such a long time. But here it is. I inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. And Sarah Payton, I've learned how she brings words of understanding and words of accompaniment to those lost parts of myself, so that I can begin to understand the dragon and stop fighting it. So it's about 10 minutes of, I don't think, I have one more story, but I don't think I have time for it. So I'm going to go into my conclusion. Joseph Campbell says, in a quote, "I don't believe people are looking for the meaning of life as much as they are looking for the experience of being alive. And the truths are, the question is, what truths are you planting to master the art of being alive?" And I believe being alive is being with the truths of unconditional love. So what are you planting in your garden? And lastly, I want to end with this. I inherited from the benevolent universe only that which is good. Enjoy your garden. Mics are open.
I got a big revelation today. And when you started talking about weeds and flowers, I thought, oh, it's like the duality. It's like the opposites in our world. And for me right now, the two are adversity or awareness. And I can get lost in the feeling of adversity or just hold on to awareness and forget, like you said, that the reason why the awareness is there is because of the adversity that preceded it. So I drew a line up and down to separate the two, and then like a line across that would be the underline, the balance, and I saw the cross. And I had this big revelation of Christ came here as an example of how to hold opposites equally and not let the ego get attached to either one, and find the beauty of each side where we can release the attachment to either one and stand as whole.
I can't think of anything to add to that. That was beautiful. Thank you.
I had the thought it goes back to the four agreements, do not make assumptions. So when we are looking at something, we call it a weed, we assume that that is totally unwanted, undesirable. And I had the thought, well, I'm kind of a what-if person, and maybe we need to rephrase the term weed and say that what I'm taking out is a potentially valuable item that's just right now in a wrong place. For example, that weed may be extremely valuable herb that another person will say, aha, been looking for that for part of my medicine cabinet because I'm into natural herbal healing. So the idea also of a dragon, we fight the dragon to slay the dragon, but as we found out in Mark's talk, by surrendering and the dragon takes off its mask, that dragon really is within us, and that's a part of us we may not want to totally destroy. It may have something to teach us, and when we integrate that, it's all part of that benevolent garden. So again, we go back to don't be very quick to make assumptions. Sometimes in life, what we think is a dragon or that person that we look at as our enemy and they want to fight us, it might be that that person in the future is going to be a very important friend and ally, that we consider them then one of our best friends. So again, don't jump to conclusions means let's give this a little thought before we take immediate action.
When we surrender to the dragon and go inward and look at those parts, and love those parts, we integrate those parts with us. And that's the creation of the oneness that is heaven. That God is the whole of everything, and we join that wholeness. And we become more of our authentic selves then. So, thanks.
I was hearing awareness of the dragon, facing the dragon, and then, you know, there's something about having to control the dragon. That is what we have to release. We have to let it go, because we can't kill every dragon. There's too darn many of them.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's a place where we can have the awareness, like I have the awareness of my body is needing some help. And so I love what you said about hitching my wagon to the benevolent universe. That's going to be in my mind a lot, because I think that's the next step. Find the awareness and accept it, and then accept that you're powerless, but you're also all-powerful when you hitch your wagon to the benevolent universe. And then as soon as you just turn your consciousness to the benevolent universe, stuff comes in. Stuff comes in that helps. And I've recently got the awareness that I want to have a healthier body, so I need to accept the universe's help. And that is exercise. I'm really too sedentary, but I love my PT. It is really helping. But if we decide we're just going to accept that we're in pain, and it's a dragon we can't win, and maybe it is. I mean, there are varying degrees, but I have seen people, I swear, who have lost both legs and are grateful because they did. Because in doing that, they found their salvation. Now that sounds, you know, pretty fundamentalist, but it's true. So, I found that very fun, and I appreciate all the comments. I think your comments were wonderful, Luann. Very helpful.
And the things you've said, especially that, you know, I'm killing a bug outside myself, but you recognize that a thought of giving to yourself or self-worth, you squash that thought. And to surrender to that, that is your fight. And to surrender to that consciousness or those beliefs, and then to look at those parts and to love those parts, will bring some beautiful gifts into your life. And I can hardly wait to see them. So thank you for taking the hero's journey. Thank you, everyone. Anyone else on the story? On Zoom? Dave, we have a few minutes. Can I tell my second story? You got time? Okay, this is a true story. This week I was on the roof, and a bee came towards me, and I saw it coming, stung me on the arm. It hurt. Then, I'm washing down the roof, and then another bee came towards me. I squirted it with the hose, and then another bee came towards me. I squirted it with the hose. So I'm fighting off bees. You know, they're trying to kill me, but I'll get them before they get me. And because I have the hose, I succeeded. And then I saw their nest, and I squirted the nest. And then the nest fell down. The next day, I saw the bees again. They were trying to rebuild the nest. I squirted the nest. The next day, I'm on the roof, and I see a bee just flying around me. And I have the hose in my hand. But something stopped me from shooting it with my hose. I stopped fighting the bee. And as it was flying around me, it's as if I could hear it. It said, "We just want to build our nest, and we will not sting you. We promise. Let's have a truce." And so this was a nonverbal. It was two souls perhaps talking to each other, and then I happened to be close enough, present enough to hear my own soul. So I said, okay. So I worked on that roof that day and the next day. They're rebuilding their nest, by the way, and I'm 8 inches from the nest. No attacks, no stinging. There was just a truce. And I think this is part of the hero's journey, that when we come to those parts, that dragon that we're fighting, to be at peace and to create a truce with those parts that are, protecting ourselves. We need to protect ourselves by hurting them first, or whatever that is, to build that truce. Because it's all you. It's always been all you. So my hope is that, because this is what I think about, that in 5 weeks from now, or 5 days, they will rebuild their nest, and then they will hatch guard bees. And I'm wondering if those guard bees will attack me. That's my thinking. But that's another journey I have to go inward to deal with that. So,
your truce was with the other ones.
yeah, my truce was with the queen and her helpers, not the guardian bees. So, will they remember the truths? The truth. So, that's my story. So, thanks for hearing.